direct conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't late me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome to Season 3 of Rhett Conversations. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fieri, and with me, she believes in peace. She believes in peace, bitch. It's Leia Cameron.
Oh, okay. You know what? That one was golden. You can keep that one.
It was between that and just so you can make her come, it doesn't make you Jesus, which would have been very apropos for this, but...
Yeah, right?
Oh, Leia, how are you doing? Are you excited for Season 3?
I am really excited. I never really imagined that we would be 3 seasons deep. I thought for sure that we would maybe do 1 season, maybe 2, and then people would be like, hey, we're tired of hearing your voice. Go do it.
Can you just not anymore? Yeah, I thought that was graphically novel too. And this is also the first season where Rhett Conversations is kind of taking, we're going to do a full 12 episodes.
Yeah.
We're going to take the lead. We are the first of the new season of both Rhett Conversations and Graphically Novel. So this is dropping July 1st.
Nice.
Yeah, we are. You have been drafted from SmackDown to Raw.
Oh my God.
Run away.
Well, okay, yes. I'm not Vince, so.
I'd like to think that I made it off Rampage and onto Dynamite.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. You've been called up from Dark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Much preferred.
And, of course, we have our guest in a house, in Jackdaw Parlor.
Here for the weekend.
Here for the weekend.
First time in the parlor.
Yep. Enjoying his first wrestling pay-per-view tonight.
Yeah.
By happenstance, I happen to know who CM Punk is out of all the wrestlers that I don't know.
Right.
There's one that I do, and he happens to be fighting tonight. So I'm like, oh.
For the title.
Yeah.
Yes.
Serendipitous. All right.
And I hope my boy's going to win it because he is the hometown hero.
That's right.
I am out here in Chicagoland, so
I'm
are
rooting for him.
for a third summer of Punk in this household. Very excited.
Jen has 2 CM Punk shirts and a Danhausen shirt to choose between.
Oh man!
And my Dark Order coffee
and your
mug.
Dark Order coffee mug.
If it weren't such a hot day, I'd be like, just wear all 3 in one.
Yeah.
Right. I am in fact wearing my Forever Always Silver Reynolds and Budge shirt. But anyway, we are not here to talk wrestling. And as you can hear, we are being audited today by Graphically Novel board member Jennifer Howland, because we are doing The Wicked plus the Divine.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing story.
Yes.
I'm not saying that I started the sleeve of the Morrigan, but I'm saying I started the sleeve of the Morrigan.
That's true. Also with Huden and Munin on you, and yep. So, Wicked and the Divine, the official title is The Wicked plus the Divine, but everybody usually just refers to it as
Or Wicked if you really, rush your time.
Right. If somebody only has given you very few syllables, Wickdiv will do in a pinch. It is by one of my favorite up-and-coming authors. Just the last decade, Kieran Gillen has blown it out of the park.
Yes.
And actually, as something that I do that Leia knows, when we have guests at the Jackdaw Parlor, I like to pull out just a few graphic novels to put next to their bed, for bedtime reading before they go down. And for Justin, I actually pulled Phonograph.
Oh my God.
Which I read part of it last night, actually. So it's going to be interesting for me to hear how the differences in music are used between these 2 different titles. Even though it's not really a phonograph podcast, I'm interested to hear kind of the dichotomy and similarities between these.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot. So one of the things that Kieran Gillen loves to do is he loves to incorporate music into his writing, and he does this very blatantly. Like, he doesn't hide it. It's not subtle. When he was working on the Young Avengers run that he did, he had playlists, Spotify playlists that he curated for every character, and he posted them on his social media. And here's and here's what this means. Here's why these songs are part of their playlist and what I listen to when I'm, writing the character or whatever.
We did that yesterday. We went to Spotify and Kieran Gillen right there.
Yep.
His username, and he's like, here's the playlist for Wicked and the Divine.
Yeah, and it's really, really cool. It's something that, when I have written things myself, I've done that exact thing. And so I was really heartwarmed to know that I wasn't a total weirdo, and that he was somebody else that did it as well. And Phonogram actually just came up on my Facebook on this day, like 2 days ago, that I had finished reading it like 14 years ago or something like that. Being impressed with it. Now I have an omnibus sitting on my bookshelf. I haven't even unwrapped it yet. Sorry, Adam. But I want to go back and read it. I just haven't had the time.
So to prepare people, if you want, after this podcast and you really, really like kind of the vibe of this book, I would suggest going to Spotify and listening, because we kind of turned it on yesterday, and Justin, you were like, there is not a single song of these that I would not just listen to.
Right, yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah, there was like Nick Cave.
I either heard it before, or they're from artists that I've listened to other parts of their music from. So it was like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah, it was like Nick Cave, Florence and the Machine. What else was on there? There was just a bunch.
And all of them I had some familiarity with already. So I was like, cool, this is my vibe. I resisted the urge to do any amount of research for this, which I know was the assignment, but it was hard. It was hard not to.
Well, Justin and anybody who this is their first episode, this is how this will go. I am the presenting professor today, Professor J. I will be taking you through step by step. So just know full spoilers, because that's literally what we're doing. At any point in this show, you can pull the emergency brake on everything that we're doing and ask a question, clarification, make a joke, whatever you want to do.
Excellent.
It is then Leia's responsibility as the assistant professor, Professor L, to answer that question.
Okay.
If she doesn't know, or she wants more help, she can phone me back, phone a friend. Since
this is all very complex.
Yes. Well, since we're being audited by Ms. Jennifer Howland, the Baronessa, if neither of us can answer it, we throw it to Jen, and Jen gives an arbitrary made-up answer.
All right.
And that is
I will take that as fact.
Or not.
Take it as fact.
You never know.
That's true. You're very unpredictable.
That can't be true.
Or we waggle our fingers and go, comic books.
Sometimes that's all you can do. Right?
Yeah, probably not for this one, but definitely for some of the mainstream comic shit that we do. All right, so we will start with Wicked and the Divine. We are doing the first volume today, which is called The Faust Act. So this opens December 31st, 1923. There are 5 people sitting around a round table that has 12 seats at the table. 4 people are seated. There is 1 woman standing. Where there's not a person sitting at the table, there is a human skull on the table in front of the empty chair.
All right.
There's no seat for the standing person, who asks if there will be any further gospel. There's no response, so the woman says, okay, well, it's been a pleasure, and I love you. She walks out saying, I'll miss you. The 4 people basically say goodbye to each other. All of them count to 4 and simultaneously snap their fingers. Then we move outside, where the woman is standing outside of the house, and the house explodes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we're starting off like kind of right in the thick of it a little
Yep.
bit.
And the last thing that we have in 1923 is the woman just saying, once again, we return.
Okay.
Then we go to January 1st, 2014 in South London. A girl leaves the house. Her name is Laura. We find that out later, but it doesn't ruin anything by saying her name is Laura. And she's leaving the house to go to a concert. She talks about the reason that she didn't tell her parents that she was going wasn't because she was worried they would disapprove. She was worried they would approve and maybe want to join her.
Okay.
And she wants this experience to be hers and hers alone. This will be a theme running through this book. Laura is
a theme for the character that she is like, I need to have my own sort of
thing. Laura's 17, and so is in that. Well, in England, 17 is an adult,
right?
So she's a new adult.
In that phase where it's time to kind of find, me separate from my familial identity.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So she goes to the venue, the concert venue, goes into the bathroom, and basically cosplays as the performer, who is red hair, kind of, I would say Bowie-esque. Bowie-esque is a woman.
Yeah, a little bit like she's got like some colorful makeup on one side of her face that's like very I guess like maybe Bowie, maybe Danhausen, kind of in between.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is more colorful than Danhausen tends to black and white. I mean, Laura is she's a brown-haired girl with blonde highlights. And when she gets there, she is wearing a bob cut red wig with this makeup over her right eye and cheek. So and she kind of looks at herself in the mirror, and she talks about how she looks like a god, and how she wishes she was the performer. So then we go to where she is watching the performer, who her name is Amaterasu. The girl is Laura is in the front row with a bunch of other people, and she informs us that the performance has lasted an hour and it has been all climax. Like there was no up and down like a normal concert or anything. Everything has just been up here the entire time.
Yeah. And it's important to note too, so this is where I'm going to get into the little bit of music bits that I do know.
All right.
The character that she's looking at, the performer that she's looking at, Amaterasu, is basically visually inspired by Florence Welch of Florence and the Machine.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
Or what that looks like.
Yeah,
She's just got colorful eye makeup on, but basically same type of vibe, loose white flowy dress, gold headdress, and long red hair. So very, very similar to Florence.
Yep. Also, the other thing that we find out is when this artist, when Amaterasu is singing, there are no discernible words.
Okay.
Nobody can tell what she's saying or singing, but everyone is enraptured with it.
All right.
So our narrator talks about how this is her favorite performer, that she's better than Baal, she's better than Sekhmet, she's better than Inanna, and she's better than fucking Tara. She compares the concert to what mass and orgasms should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess a very exceptionally satisfying experience. I don't know.
Spiritual and sexual all at the same time.
We've all been to concerts like that, right?
Well,
right? That's normal.
Yes, that's
I mean,
totally normal.
I suppose, except I usually sort of understand what they're saying, I guess, most of the time. So, and I mean, it might be too early to ask this question, but with regard to how music is used throughout the volume, is it like this in the sense, because we talked a little bit about the playlists and that the actual author uses, is the use of music here like this in the sense that you get it through scenes like this where there are concerts and performers playing music, or does it branch out into other, because it's music isn't the first thing I think of when I think of a graphic novel, so that's why I'm intrigued by precisely how music is utilized within the text and the imagery of the Wicked plus the Divine.
Sure, yeah. So all of the gods of the pantheon are all musical performers. Some of them do also do like visual arts of different types, but primarily they are all musical artists, because that is the best way, especially in modern culture, to immediately gain
a big following, right? Yeah.
And have followers and things like that. As we go through, you'll kind of get a better picture of what that means, because it is almost cult-like for some of the fans, but that's also kind of a commentary on music fans in general. Like, so
well, and in speaking of that,
hardcore gatekeepers of various.
Yeah, where we are, Amaterasu's eyes just scan the front row, and Laura lets us know that one girl passes out. The girl on her left passes out. The guy on her right jizzes his pants and falls to his knees because she looked at them.
Yeah,
I would say I don't know if we've all been there, as opposed to the energy of a concert in general.
I can imagine myself jizzing my pants and passing out if Tori Amos talked to me in the middle of a concert.
In the year of our Lord 2018, I saw Tom York at the Stifle Theater in St. Louis in pretty good seats, and he played one of my favorite Radiohead songs, and that was kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Okay. Amaterasu smiles at Laura, and she too, after we go through kind of what's going on in her internal process, which is just like hamana.
Right.
She too passes out. She awakens in the company of a smartly dressed. Okay, when writing this, I'm just gonna break for a second, because this character's gender is not identified for over 100 pages when one of the other gods uses a pronoun.
Okay.
So I saw them as non-binary because they are very androgynous on purpose.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense for things that are not, especially things that are more than human. It makes sense that they would be almost.
Right. Well, so this non-binary figure is dressed all in white, short blonde hair, smoking a cigarette almost always. Laura immediately identifies them. And Laura's like, "Oh my God, you're..." And the person cuts them off and is like, yeah, I know. Father of lies, adversary, Apollyon, etc., etc.
Okay.
So yes, this is Lucifer. And she says, you could just call me Lucifer. She snaps her fingers and the cigarette that's in her mouth lights.
Okay.
Showing just a little bit of power.
A little bit of
and then Laura is basically like, "Oh my God, you're Lucifer. You just used a miracle to light a cigarette. Is that how you knew my name?" And Lucifer's like, "No, I looked through your wallet. I'm the devil." Lucy asks Laura if she'd like to meet Amaterasu, and Laura is immediately like, "I'll do anything." And she. This is also when Laura reveals she has seen several other gods in concert. All of the main 5 that are basically pop stars, she's seen them.
And at this point for her, they're just super cool pop stars, right? Or does she know?
Well,
we're about to get into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Lucy, and Laura is like, "Oh my God, she's the best. I love her so much."
Right.
She's like, "You're really good too." And Lucy kind of waves her hand and is like, "I am not a jealous god," which is the most Lucifer fucking thing in the world, because it's true. But Lucy takes Laura to a room where Amaterasu is giving an interview. Sekhet is also there. She is extremely cat-like, acting like a cat. Kind of has the furs on.
Sekhmet actually, her character model for visual reference is based on Rihanna, and Jamie McKelvey does an excellent job of that. She's just insanely beautiful, but very leonine in features.
The interview conducts where basically the interviewer is asking very pointed questions about you think you're a god. So what's the deal? And Amaterasu's being very
so the gods, the musical performers are very open about their perceived status within, above average, above human status within society. Yep. They're fully verbal about it.
This is where we also learn the trade-off.
Okay.
Because when a god awakens, basically a god awakens in a person.
Like a human avatar that then, okay.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah. And they're both the god and the person still. Okay. But they're going to die within 2 years.
Oh.
It's also important to note that in the world that this is set in, that's a known fact. Like, people know that is
okay. That's common knowledge.
They know the pantheon the thing. They know the 2 years and you die thing. They know that the gods have certain powers and things like that. So none of that is really up for debate. It's not really hidden in.
Okay.
They're not like pretending, essentially
right.
people.
Is the timeline, is the 2 years, and I guess you'll probably get to this as we're getting more into it, but is the 2 years like, do the gods recycle and then go back into another, or is it more of an issue for them? Because if they can just do it again, is it just the 2 years is a problem for the human host, or is it also a problem for the gods, or do they care that the timeline is so short?
I don't. As far as I know, I don't think we ever really get a clear answer.
Oh, okay.
We do.
Do we?
Yeah.
Like,
there's a 90-year period between
cycles?
Times. Yeah.
Okay.
And all the gods have to, basically there are only 12 that can come during a period.
Okay.
And the periods are every 90 years.
Now, so they then, there's more than 12 and they compete for which ones get one of the 12 spots every cycle? Or?
In this book, that part is not explored. All we know is that there are more than 12 gods.
Okay.
And at one point they refer to it as if they choose to show.
Right.
But,
okay.
Somehow that's decided. So the interviewer's asking questions like, about them being gods. She's very cynical about it. She does not believe that they're actually gods. Lucy does some fantastic narration, like basically very snarky the entire time. The interviewer is asking her, okay, so what is the purpose of gods being rock stars, basically? And Amaterasu's like, we're gods, we live to inspire, we make life worth living even for an evening at a time. And Lucy kind of turns to Laura and is like, translation, we don't really do anything useful.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then, the interviewer says, okay, so you're gods for 2 years, and then what happens? And Amaterasu's like, we go away for a while.
Now, I have to ask, just because Leah had mentioned, the common knowledge aspect of the timeline and all this other stuff, is it explained why there are still cynics in society if people know more or less that this is true and that there's no doubt? Is there a reason for cynics to still exist, I guess?
So basically, because because it happens once every 90 years, it's pretty rare that somebody's going to live to see of these reoccurrences.
Right.
Like, it's been written out. It's been, it's been.
They need to redo it every few generations. They got to kind of make a comeback then.
Right. And so it's a case of we know this is a thing, but of course, especially now in the modern day, when this is set in 2014, that cynicism comes kind of naturally, right? Because it's like, yeah, the gods are back, sure, whatever, because nobody really alive has seen 2 recurrences in their lifetime.
Right. That makes sense.
Also, by the end of this scene, you'll know why there are cynics.
Patience, Justin.
So Cassandra's basically like, you're not actually Amaterasu. All of that's bullshit. Your name is Hazel Greenaway. You're 17 years old. And if you really believe that you're going to die within 2 years, how can you be so calm? And Amaterasu's basically like, okay, well, I spent all my life wanting to be special and wishing I was special. Now I'm a god. So I'm pretty at peace with it.
It's the top that she could hope to achieve, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
This is where we get the 90 years. And where Cassandra's like, yeah, you guys say you could do miracles, but why aren't you just like walking down the street doing miracles? Sure. And she comes up with a lot of solutions for what people see during the shows. That she's like everything from drugging audiences to mass hysteria to all of these other things. And then Lucy starts in on the interview and really starts picking apart at her. And the interviewer's going right back at her, basically calling them all wannabes and saying she doesn't believe shit. And Lucifer finally kind of ends it by asking her, the interviewer, if she's actually called Cassandra and uses quotes, or are you just another hypocritical little parasite? And that's when Sekhmet tackles Lucifer.
Literally?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because, and she's yelling, "There's the red dot. I love the red dot." And then, like, the red dot appears on the couch next to Cassandra, and Sekhmet knocks the couch over, and Lucifer's like, okay, whoever's playing with a laser pointer, this isn't funny, and that's when the hail of bullets comes through the window, hitting a bunch of the people that are doing the interviews. And so from the building across the way, there are 2 armed gunmen firing down. Lucifer basically gets pissed off.
Right. I'm assuming they're not affected by bullets, right? Or are they?
Lucifer's not.
Okay.
Nope.
She stands up and stands in this broken window barefoot, and bullets bouncing off of her, and she holds up both of her hands, snaps both of her fingers, and both the shooters' heads explode.
Okay. Very efficient.
She then looks at Cassandra and says, this is why we don't go around doing miracles, because we don't want to scare the shit out of everyone. This is scary, right? Then you find out that the police showed up shortly afterwards, and Lucifer went willingly with them. Because now we're going to Lucifer's double murder trial.
Yep.
Interesting segue.
Yep.
All right.
And Lucifer's like, okay.
But it's for this incident? Or is
yes.
It, it's for this. Okay,
yes.
So they fingered him as the culprit.
Her, yeah. Well, yes. Now, but that's what she starts pointing out. She's like, okay, so snap my fingers, and their heads exploded.
She's on
trial
for the murder, quote unquote, of the gunmen that were trying to kill everybody.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
She's like, so I snapped my fingers and their heads exploded. Do you have any science? Do you have any murder weapon? Do you have anything? She's like, because if you'd like to call it an act of God, that's going to set up a very interesting precedent in law moving forward. The judge is not amused with any of this. And threatens to hold Lucifer in contempt of court. And Lucifer's like, okay, but like, seriously, what are you charging me with, and how are you charging me with it? You know, and the judge says, you're not a god. And, you know, there has to be an explanation. I know you're responsible. And Lucifer again holds up her hand and is like, okay, so if I snap my fingers, that's a crime? And the judge holds her in contempt of court.
It should be all noted too, real quick. I didn't mention this before. To get a visual on Lucy, who I didn't mention, think David Bowie in the Thin White Duke era.
Okay. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I've got a good picture for that. All right.
So Lucifer, like, basically is holding her hand in the snapping fingers position. The judge whispers the word "don't," and then she does it, and the judge's head explodes.
Oh, okay. Didn't expect that. Okay.
Oh, Lucifer didn't either.
Right.
Really?
Lucifer is not expecting this
okay.
at all, because immediately starts saying, I didn't do that. I was just fucking around. I did not.
There's a brilliant panel of just like real pure true shock and horror on her face right after you see the judge's head. You can tell that was not that. And, she says it wasn't me, but very much so, like, that was not her.
Yeah. And now that does not stop the bailiffs and people from immediately coming.
What else are they?
Right. So in the courtroom, actually, Laura is in the courtroom. How and why is not explained.
Okay.
And so is Amaterasu. And Amaterasu basically starts to move towards Lucifer. And Lucifer says, you need to get Ananke. And that is really what we get out of her. Then it moves to Baal being interviewed on TV. basically about the gods, you know. And he's the one that's pointing out, okay, so two men tried to kill her. She, you know, why was she there in court? Like, they got killed, you know, trying to kill her.
Well, and that's why I said, quote, I think I said something like, quote unquote, murder or something.
Right.
Because, like, you know,
right.
they just tried to kill a bunch of people, their heads explode. So what's the real issue here?
Right. Well, now it's become a whole other thing, because the interviewer's like, despite her being there, a judge's head exploded.
Well, yeah.
So Laura is in her house with her family watching. Baal does not have time for this fucking. And he when he is asked if the gods are dangerous, he ends the interview. He straight trumps out. We see Laura's family watching the interview, and it becomes apparent that they don't believe in the gods either. Like, her dad is trying to basically pick a fight.
So, and again, I circle back just quickly to the point of belief versus cynicism. Is it ever explained that there are relatively recent historical records kept about the other times that they've done this in the 90-year cycles? Do we have records?
Well, the previous one was in 1923, which is what opened up
what we started with.
The most recent historically to the events of this book. So
Okay.
kind of.
Kind of.
But even then, like, even though it's known that they're the
it's hard to believe it's authentic, I guess.
Right.
Because with sufficient science, there is no more magic.
Right.
You know, magic can be just a type of science that we have not.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And it was also previously stated by one of the characters too. Like, they don't go around, you know, wanting these powers and you know, making a spectacle of themselves outside of their performances.
Right. Now, at this point, whether or not that's a rule that they really hold to, or like Lucifer said, the reason that she didn't do it is because she doesn't want to freak everybody the fuck out, which, you know, good on you. This will change.
Okay.
Just to give you a little taste of what's coming up, because things escalate real quick. Also, we find out that Laura's parents don't know she was at the concert when the attack happened, don't know she was at the trial, don't know about her relationship with these gods.
All right.
But she is, while this interview's going on and her parents are watching it, sitting on the floor, Googling Ananke, who is the absolute ruler of destiny and fate, and seems to be like a caretaker deity to other deities.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
So we move to 1 week later, and Laura's basically talking about how she hasn't gone to class for a week. She's going to fail her classes on purpose because gods don't need to go to class, and she wants to be a god. She calls Lucy's lawyer and fakes being a messenger from Ananke, who she overheard Lucy asking Amaterasu to get Ananke. And so basically calls Lucy's lawyer and says, hey, I have a message from Ananke. I need you to set me up seeing Lucy.
And the lawyer is just like, okay, I'll believe that.
Yes.
All right.
So Laura gets in to see Lucy, who asks if she brought cigarettes or cocaine, preferably cocaine.
Preferably. Well, yes, of course.
Laura's like, no. She's like, aren't you 17? What kind of 17-year-old are you to not have cocaine?
Right? Because all 17-year-olds have cocaine.
Well,
yeah. God, I would have called the police on myself if I was 17. I was such a nerd.
Oh, man. Can you come over here and maybe beat me with a nightstick?
So you need help.
Yeah. So Laura like tells her, she's like, I faked being a messenger. I called your lawyer. Right. That's how I got this meeting. I'm not here from Ananke. By the way, who's Ananke? Right. And Lucifer's actually pretty taken with Laura, and is like that took gumption. a lot of guts and So she tells her that Ananke is the god's secret. Basically, she is the person that is there when they reincarnate. So Ananke is at each one of their births.
Okay. All right.
Their rebirth, I guess. This is also where we find out that the gods reincarnate every 90 years.
Okay.
So we actually get a flashback to when Lucy was reborn. She was in her house. She's an only child, home alone on a Friday night. Her parents are out at a British punk concert. She's smoking the same brand cigarettes as her mom, so that the butts will mix into the ashtray. And she sees somebody basically sitting on the swing in her backyard. So she grabs a knife and goes outside just in case they want trouble. And as she approaches, the figure turns, and it's an old woman, and it's the same looking old woman from 1923 that we saw outside the house.
Last time, okay, yep.
And Lucifer is awakened. So there's a scene of the body kind of falling through air and blackness, and it starts to like introduce, like, you will live for 2 years and then you will die. You will be the Lord of the Pit. You are Lucifer. And Lucifer awake.
Now, is this a thing where it's like, this is happening, deal with it, or are they asking the human, or is
They
it
do
just
get a choice.
they do?
Yeah.
Okay.
They do not.
They do not. Okay. Do not. Okay.
No. God's like, you are my meat puppet now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ananke is the caretaker of the Pantheon. Basically, at this point, we are through the flashback, and Lucifer's like, so you want to be a demon? And Laura's like, can you do that? And she's like, oh yeah, Woden makes Valkyries all the time, gives parts of their power to make Valkyries. So fuck yeah, I can make demons. I haven't made any. Come to think of it,
you could be,
but nobody's been worthy. And she's like, but you're the only person that has come and visited me. So yeah, we're friends now. I'll make you a demon.
All right.
And actually, what she says is, you're the only one that came to see me in hell.
Mm.
Laura meets up with Cassandra at the National Portrait Gallery. She has sent Cassandra information on Ananke, basically, the name and things, and she wants to recruit her to help.
Cassandra is the interviewer.
The interviewer,
okay.
Yep.
All right.
Wants to help her clear Lucy's name.
Okay.
Basically. Kind of also where we find out Cassandra is a student, an expert on gods and mythology.
Okay.
Yeah, literally did her thesis on the stories around the recurrence, which is what we call it.
Which is also why she thinks it's bullshit.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So Cassandra surmises, okay, it would have to be a god associated with fire. So that could make it Amaterasu, Baal, Sekhmet, Woden, Inanna, Minerva, possibly the Morrigan, and maybe Terra, but nobody knows what mythology Terra is from, so she doesn't know if she's a fire.
So there's a combination of mythos going on here.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
It is not one single particular pantheon.
Right.
When they say the pantheon, it's many, every world culture, every religion, etc.
Yeah, but all the gods as a whole are referred to as the pantheon.
Right. Okay.
Cassandra is like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to go to Woden's fucking Valhalla clubhouse, basically for the gods that Woden has made, and she suggests Laura go. You're gonna have to go and talk to one of the other people that's not gonna be there, and Laura's like, I'm not gonna go see fucking Terra. And everyone seems to fucking hate Terra.
Well,
it's
you
really
mentioned that
funny.
at the beginning, and I was like, "Oh, what's wrong with that?"
And Cassandra says, "That's not who I meant. You have to go see the Morrigan." Which we find out Laura has not seen. She has seen all of the gods that are like pop stars.
Mm-hmm.
She's not seen the Morrigan because the Morrigan is literally and figuratively underground.
Okay.
While the other gods are like in your face pop stars on stage, the Morrigan has her performances in underground, abandoned subway stations.
Okay.
So Laura joins a crowd going down, and they wait silently for a half an hour. And that's when somebody says, is she showing up? And a new god, Baphomet, appears, holding the decapitated head of the Morrigan.
Well, that escalated quickly. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. basically, and he's like, "Yay, I'm the new god. You love me, don't ya?" And everybody's like shocked. He's like, "Okay, well, Morgan, get the party started." And so the decapitated head of the Morgan starts being like, "Yeah, Baphomet. Everybody loves Baphomet." And like spits some puns and is like, "Everybody loves puns. Yay, Baphomet." And that's when the real Morrigan appears in a cloud of crows.
Okay.
Yes.
And is pissed.
In Inanna, or I'm not Inanna. Morgan is based on a number of like goth female artists, like Kate Bush, Susie Sue, etc.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
We also find out from what she's saying that this is not that the Morrigan has different faces and personas.
Okay.
This is not the Morrigan. This is bad.
Yeah. So for students of for people who are not students of world cultures and mythology, Morgan is a 3-in-1 deity she has 3 aspects: mother, maiden, crone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because she is a war goddess. There is Bob is the violent, bloodthirsty one, and then we'll meet some other ones as we go.
Okay.
Right. So Baphomet and the Morgans square off, and like they're going to fight. Like Baphomet is raising the dead of the people that have killed themselves on the third rail of the subway, and they are going to go at it. Laura is like, I don't know if they can kill each other, but in the crossfire, they are absolutely going to kill every person here. So she de-escalates the fight by picking up the Morgan's decapitated head and basically doing Hamlet with it.
As one does to defuse these situations.
Right. This calms the gods who are like, again, they're like, you're a ballsy bitch. Like every god when she does things like this is like, I like you.
Right.
Like,
well, I'm sure they're not in situations probably where they see this kind of thing so often, where there's these humans that are willing to kind of go to this level,
Right.
I'd just be sitting there like peeing myself. Basically.
Right, and that's what most of the people are doing. Laura is very different in that way. The calming the gods does not last long. They very quickly again start sniping each other, and it escalates. So there's like a blackness that's kind of coming through and covering everyone, and Laura's basically like, well, we're dead. We're all dead. Fuck it, we're dead. And that's when the cops arrive, because there's a gathering of children, or of young people in a subway, and so they need to stop that immediately.
I'm kind of wondering how they knew there was a disturbance in the abandoned subway, but
there's probably a person of color selling loose cigarettes that they had to kill.
This is in England, so maybe not.
Well, yeah, you're right.
But it's also too. I mean, there's a big crowd down there, so like it's kind of hard to keep that.
Yeah, it's one of those rave situations. I can see that.
Right. So they start basically everybody on the ground, everybody back away. Baphomet just straight up sets a cop on fire, and the man dies screaming.
Right.
He dies, but the Morrigan walks forward now as the third persona, Gentle Annie. And she says, no, he's not dead. He's just sleeping. Wake up. And heals the cop.
Okay.
And resurrects him.
It's important to note, too, that whenever the Morrigan's personas appear, they all 3 of them look very distinctly different.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
The cops at this point are not having it. They're like, okay, hey lady, to the Morgan, you're under arrest. And the Morgan's like, oh, I don't think so.
Right.
And just like turns around and walks away from them down a subway tunnel. And Laura follows her. And Laura says, hey, Baphomet right there just did something similar, like, to what happened to the judge. Like,
makes a connection.
Lucifer's innocent. It was Baphomet. And at this point, the aspect that she's talking to is Bob. How do you pronounce it?
Bob.
Okay. Who says, no, unfortunately, at the time of the murder, Baphomet and the Morrigan were fucking.
Oh.
So it couldn't have been Baphomet.
All right.
And she's like, trust me, I wish it was Baphomet. And then she also says she would love to help more, because Lucifer is, in her mind, Lucifer is an underworld god. She belongs to Morgan and Baphomet and
sure.
this I guess you could call it a pantheon within a pantheon.
Yeah,
because
sure.
there's the above ground gods, and then there are the underground gods.
Right.
And then she tells Laura, at any time you go into the dark and call for me, I will answer. Which is and then Laura gets arrested. Like a cop shows up and arrests Laura as the Morgan pieces out into the shadows. So Laura's arrested. She's released, but obviously in the care of her parents, who thought she was just at college, being a student. So there's a big fight between her and her parents, and then she leaves and meets Cassandra at a coffee shop. Cassandra wants Laura to recall everything that Lucifer said about the other gods, because in their discussion, they basically said, okay, who could be a suspect?
Right. And there was quite a list.
Yes.
Right.
So Amaterasu is Lucy's best friend, and she's notoriously sappy. So she's like a soft touch kind of god. But Lucifer also says genre dictates that it was probably her because she is kind-hearted and my best friend. Right. It's probably her. Ananke, Lucifer's like, it's just not her style. Mm-hmm. Inanna is too ethical. Apparently, except in bed. Lucifer has also slept with almost all the gods, you find out.
All right.
Sekhmet has nothing against Lucifer, so she's not sure why. And also, Sekhmet's a fucking cat. Like, Woden, Lucifer's like, I don't know much about Woden, so I don't know. I don't know what goes on under that mask.
Right.
Minerva's too kind and is also 12 years old. This is the only god that Lucifer has not slept with, and Lucifer even mentions, I have limits. Baal is not a fan of Lucifer, especially after Lucifer fucked his boyfriend. And then Cassandra places the largest odds on it probably being Baal, because when she went to Valhalla, she witnessed a fight between him and Inanna. And while there are several Baals, there is evidence of a certain Baal that there are documented cases of child sacrifice.
Okay.
To that god, so she equates it with, okay, so if it's this Baal, if it's this incarnation of Baal, it has the capability of this murder.
Right.
And as she's breaking all of this down, they are interrupted by Baal, who approaches their table and is like, if you're going to talk about somebody, make sure they can't hear you.
Right.
So Baal,
for visual representation, Baal's appearance is based on Kanye West. I also point out this was written in the year of our Lord 2014, or 2013, 2014. And so this is
Gizzy being out of his fucking mind.
Yeah, pre-present day Kanye. This is like young up and coming Chicago through the wire Kanye.
Right. Although I do believe that this is post George W. Bush hates black people Kanye. That tracks. So Baal basically threatens Cassandra and Laura with lawsuits unless they go with him to Valhalla.
As one does.
And actually it's funny because as they're walking through Valhalla, he's like, just so you know, there are many Baals. The sacrifice one is Baal Hanan. I am Baal Hadad.
Now, is Valhalla in this case an actual
building?
It's a building. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not something on another plane of existence that they can get to by any kind of...
No, it's basically, Valhalla is basically Woden's club.
Okay, I was going to guess maybe is it a club or something? Okay.
Yeah, for the most part, it's just where the gods hang out.
Yeah. Okay.
So he also points out that fire is not his element. Lightning is. Okay. So it also was not his idea to bring them there. He much would prefer to sue them into oblivion.
To bring them to Valhalla?
Yes, but somebody else asked him to bring them there. So at a certain point, he's also talking about his aspect as a god of lightning and things like that. And Laura falls in love with him. Like, Laura is just like, he is the dreamiest dreamboat that has ever dreamboated. Baal explains that he and Inanna fought because Inanna wants to go see Lucifer in jail, but the Pantheon has decided that they need to let it play out. For reasons.
Right.
Now,
when you say this, I guess it might, if it comes up in the story, is there, do they form a sort of quorum where if the majority of them make a big decision, the other ones kind of have to go along with it? Is there a hierarchy of some kind at all in this, or?
Well, we'll kind of see a little bit of it as this goes on, and
Okay.
in more detail in the series past just
later.
This,
later.
So.
Gotcha.
So at this point, Baal is like, okay, well, Cassandra, you stay here because you weren't the reason that we were bringing you guys here. Ananke wants to talk to Laura only. So Cassandra stays in the hallway with some guards, and Baal takes Laura into a room that has Sekhmet, Minerva, Ananke, and Amaterasu.
Okay.
Laura is losing her ever-loving mind.
Of course.
It is implied that being in the presence of these gods, like even if they're not at a concert or things like that, like you will feel holy reverence. Mm-hmm. Amusingly, Cassandra does not. And that is something that she pointed out back at the interview. It's why she can her skepticism.
Okay. Now, is there something with that will be revealed in later volumes or chapters?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so Ananke explains that to Laura that all of them had the capacity for murder, even from miles away. Even if they were not a fire deity themselves, a fire deity could have loaned their powers.
Oh.
They can loan their powers to each other. But she says, we don't do these things. We don't perform these miracles. We don't kill humans. This is why. This is the result. She also says the Pantheon will police itself until the killer is found, and in the meantime, the safest place for Lucy to be is in her cell.
Sure.
If things continue to escalate, humanity may lose all inspiration, and if that happens, the gods cannot reincarnate again.
Okay.
So, because all of this is happening in the world, it is threatening the gods' ability to be able to come back in 9 years.
Right.
Hopefully that a little bit more of your earlier questions.
Yeah, no, definitely.
By the way, this is page 113. This is the first time Lucifer's been referred to as she.
Okay.
Which is why I was using they, them a lot of the times I was writing these notes, because, and you know what? I almost prefer that it would have been they, them, but
Sure.
I mean, an earlier time.
Sure.
Ananke asks Laura to tell Lucy that they love her, but they will not be coming to see her.
Right.
Laura goes off on all of them. And basically is like, you're sitting here with a killer, Lucy's sitting in a cell, and you're doing nothing. But the next scene is Laura passing on the message to Lucy, and...
I mean, they did say they were going to investigate, right?
However, this is where, in this scene with her talking to Lucy, this is kind of where Lucy sees the writing on the wall. Because she has less than 2 years to live, this process could take more than that.
Well,
so there's a very real chance Lucy will die in prison. She again asks if Laura brought cocaine.
As one
Laura
does.
says no, but she did bring her cigarettes. And Lucy's like, oh, awesome. Well, that's great, because I've had enough. And they have like restraints on her fingers that are supposed to keep her from snapping.
Like there's no friction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's Lucifer just shrugs them off and basically shrugs all of her bonds off, snaps her fingers, and explodes several walls in the prison to be free. Yep.
Okay.
And the glass, the panel of glass that she was sitting in front, it just melts.
Yeah.
Sure.
I haven't been saying when one issue ends and another one begins. This one is just kind of cool the way that they did it, because that's the end of issue 4. In the beginning of issue 5 is Lucy's walking down the street, listening to the Rolling Stones, setting fires to vehicles, including a truck full of riot police.
Wow.
Like, Lucifer has had enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Laura is trying to get to her to talk some sense into her, but the police are holding her back. Cassandra basically shows up and is like, what's going on? And Laura's like, this. Amaterasu shows up and tries to talk some sense into Lucy. Lucy's like, I'm not going back.
Right.
Like I've had enough. And that's when Baal attacks her, like basically drops from the sky and tackles her and is attacking her. The fight is soon joined by Saknet. And Laura realizes they're going to kill Lucy. So she grabs...
Now, is this a direct response to escaping jail, or is this...
Well, it probably also has to do with walking down the street and just, like, exploding a bunch of vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucy is causing chaos. And obviously not giving the gods a great view. So Laura is like, what am I going to do against three gods?
Right.
Grabs Cassandra, runs down a what do you call it? The tube?
Tube station?
Tube station.
Yep.
Goes into a subway tunnel where it is dark, but there is a train coming right at her and screams for the Morrigan.
Okay.
And the Morrigan saves her and is basically
well, she did say she would.
Right.
So.
And the Morrigan saves her and is like, what can I do for you? The fight up top continues.
Sure.
Baal tells Lucy to go back to her cell. Lucy asks Baal, would you? And Baal says, never. So, and then the entire street is flooded with crows. In the mayhem, in the middle of the crows, Laura appears to Lucy and is like, basically, take my hand and come with me. Lucy grabs her hand, and it seems like they are teleported into a room where Cassandra and her film crew basically are waiting. Lucy is like, I fucked everything up. This is so bad. Like, this whole situation is so bad. And she even apologizes to Cassandra, and we find out why Cassandra was upset when Lucifer called her Cassandra with quotation marks, because Lucy knew she was trans and wanted to hurt her. Cassandra's a trans woman.
Okay.
Laura tells Lucy, you're going to need to go to the underground. The Morrigan has agreed that you can basically stay with the Morrigan.
Now, at this point, Laura is still a fully human person, just getting a little bit of help from the Morrigan, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucy has not turned her into a demon.
Okay.
Lucy goes to leave and tosses Laura her cigarette pack and is like, a gift for you. And she's like, okay, well, time to go be underground. I could do that. I could be Lucifer, the underground star. As she walks out the door, Ananke is there, and she looks at her and says, I love you, Lucifer. Snaps her fingers, and Lucifer's head explodes.
Oh. Now, Lucifer did say that was the most likely, or do I have the names mixed up?
I think you have the names mixed up. Yeah.
Yeah. It was Amaterasu.
Yes,
that she says, because it shouldn't be her, genre dictates it will likely be her.
Okay.
No, she in fact said that Ananke, there was really not a chance that it was her. Yeah. Laura kind of goes into a disassociative state and loses some time.
She witnesses this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, there is blood all over her.
Okay.
When she kind of comes to, all the Pantheon are there. Laura is screaming at the Morrigan, Annie, to heal Lucifer, and Annie's like, because Laura's like, you healed that cop, you resurrected the cop, and Annie says, that cop was sleeping, Lucifer's dead.
Interesting distinction.
Yes.
It's to me anyway.
Well, and it's implied, never quite stated too, that Gentle Annie's powers only work on mortals.
That makes sense. This.
You're right.
Okay.
Ananke notices there's a camera crew and addresses them. Basically, has them broadcast her message. And she says the Pantheon polices itself. There is nothing mortals can do to stop them.
Right.
She said, besides, mortals have always shown more interest in the gods than the gods have ever shown in mortals. Generally speaking, gods desire nothing but adoration. After this message, Laura becomes a celebrity. She was the mortal at so many god events.
Okay.
The Pantheon kind of pull back because they're in mourning. So all of the media attention is on Laura.
So Anake made that statement about the policing aspect. Am I to understand then that she killed Lucifer because she believed Lucifer was actually guilty of the other head exploding stuff?
Not necessarily.
I'm a little bit confused there.
Lucifer was a liability.
Right. Okay.
So
Because they did not allow the Pantheon to do their work before she decided to get out of jail herself.
Well, and also went on a murder spree.
Well, yeah. Okay.
that was the
Okay.
part. So it's less of a judgment about the murder and more of the fact that like now you have become a liability and now you threaten all.
Right.
Okay.
Right. They very specifically talk about how she set a riot van full of or a van full of riot cops on fire.
Right. So at this point, I still am I as the reader, I'm still not sure who killed the
Correct.
snipers.
No, the snipers was Lucifer.
Oh,
The sniper was
oh
the
no,
judge.
sorry,
Judge.
The
the
judge.
judge. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the judge. Okay.
That has not yet been explained.
Okay.
Right.
Good to know.
So Laura basically is talking about how she always wanted to be a celebrity, and now she very much does not.
Right.
She is not.
This is
happy.
not what I imagined.
Yeah.
It's not cool.
So she's alone in her room, playing with the cigarette pack that Lucifer gave her. There's only one cigarette left in it. And so Laura puts it in her mouth and just to fuck around snaps her fingers and
I love that.
the
The last gift.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The last words in the book are white words on an all black page that is Laura saying, "Oh God, it's not over."
I like it.
And that is the end of Wicked in the Volume 1 of Wicked in the Divine.
One.
And you said there's 9.
9 volumes.
Okay.
I believe they're all over there.
It's either 9 or 10. I can't remember.
Either 9 or 10. Yeah. It's a fantastic series.
It's so good, and of course the artwork is just I
Sure.
love McKelvey's artwork.
So any lasting questions?
I got pretty much all my questions answered. It's all very intriguing, and I'm sure this is true for many readers of graphic novels. What interests me about this one is all the different hooks that are in the story. Like when you mentioned the beginning and the setting with the table and everything like that, that's something that would immediately cause me to continue reading the story to get the full scope of things. And one thing I really like about this one is that I'm sure we can all name various graphic novels where gods and deities come up, but I don't know if I'm familiar with one that so focuses on it the way that this one seems to, and the intricacies involved in it, which is very
totally.
gripping.
The way that I've described this when I started reading it is I have not had a comic book grab me in this way since my first read of Sandman. And
I was gonna say Sandman. You know, this is the only thing that kind of reminds me of it. Is Sandman.
Right, because much like Neil Gaiman, Kieran Gillen also does his research into mythos and
an amazing amount of research.
Right.
Yeah, like it's really, really well done in that regard, especially because the gods that he's chosen to service, some of them are familiar, some of them are not.
Right.
Everybody kind of knows who, for example, it's probably common knowledge, like who Woden or Odin is.
Right.
Like most of a word grasp with that, but Inanna.
And I had no idea. No.
The various balls,
right.
like
and
those
different aspects of the Morgan. The Morgan shows up a lot in popular culture, but not as the 3-in-1 deity,
right?
Not as accurately as this one has them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, are you interested?
Yeah, I think I'm probably gonna continue just because of all those different aspects, and the twists in just volume 1 are, from as you've described them to me, are very well done in a way that you're pretty much hooked till the end, especially if you have any interest in this kind of subject matter, which I do. The way that there's a twist every time you think you know what the heck is going on, it turns out you don't.
Well, and I only touched on the real surface area, so I would recommend actually reading through volume 1. Yeah. But the way that, and there are things that I obviously left out because they weren't really important to driving the plot, but they are a flavor. Like the first page, like where sometimes before a book you'll have like a quote
Yeah.
or something like that. The top quote is from Christopher Marlowe, from Dr. Faustus. Faustus, thou now hast thou been one bare hour to live, and then thou must be damned perpetually. Stand still, you ever-moving spheres of heaven, that time may cease and midnight never come. Mm-hmm. And then the quote running under that is Boom, 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 Boom by the Venga Boys.
It's so great. And there's tons of if you're a music lover, the other thing that's kind of neat too is in the dialogue there's peppered in references to some of the characters. For example, the Baal character at one point talks about, if you need a quote, here's your quote. I knew I was a god long before I became one. That's a direct reference to Kanye West's song "I Am a God."
Sure. And like the snipers when before Lucifer explodes their heads, it's standing in the window, saying good evening, and they yell, "Die, Lucifer!" And she's like, "Huh, you guessed my name."
Right.
And then explodes their heads. Like
a little bit of sympathy for the devil there.
Yeah, I like that. A lot.
There's all kinds of little references like that, and honestly, on my first read through, I didn't catch them all.
Of course.
But this go round, I picked up a lot more that I didn't see the previous time, and I was very delighted by that because I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's also stated somewhere in there that Lucifer's real name. So all these avatars basically have, their regular names, before they became these gods. And Lucifer's real name is Eleanor Rigby. And
oh, really? Okay.
Her parents were very big fans of the Beatles. There's a couple Beatles references in some of the things in some of her dialogue as well.
Anything that references classic music or classic literature, I go nuts for that kind of stuff. Anytime they work that into dialogue quotes for characters, I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Well, I've got good news for you, and it's called The Wicked and the Divine. Jen, was there anything that you had forgotten? Because I know you read this shortly after I did, because I was like, you have to read this. And you did want to sit in today because you're a fan of this.
It wasn't that I had forgotten. I think that I thought that what I remembered happens later in this series.
Ah, okay.
And I thought that there were some things that happened in this first book that happened, I think, in the next
If it's the same thing I'm thinking of, I had the same issue. I was like,
yeah, the one, and it's not even a disappointment because it had to happen, but Lucifer dying at the end of this, I just remember being traumatized.
Well,
why? It's such a great character.
Well, and I was going to say, even though I haven't read the volume yet, it was clear to me as we were going on that this is an extremely cool character to follow, and you're pretty sure by the end of this, given how things have been playing out, that there's a finality to that death, and you're like, oh man, now there's 8 or 9 more volumes, and
do keep in mind too, for future reading, you haven't met all the gods in the pantheon
yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because we've met 5, 6, 7. In Ananke, who doesn't count as one of the 12.
Right, and we did see visually and briefly, we saw Minerva, who is a 12-year-old girl who really isn't based on any one artist. Tends to wear kind of like, in this particular one, she was wearing a like military style coat, like think of like 1980s Michael Jackson, like that, and has like a mechanical owl with her.
That's cool.
And then we briefly saw Woden.
Actually, looking at her outfit, it's Elton John.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Like I was pulling up that type of the red coat and the little shoulder. I don't even know what they're called.
Shoulder tassels. Yeah. Yes.
But and then
short
Woden,
cropped hair. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Woden is basically looks like a member of Daft Punk. He's covered by a shiny reflective helmet, like you can't see. And he's like you can't see what he looks like. And then usually one of his Valkyries is with him, and in this particular case, the Valkyrie that we do see is taller than him. And and it fairly pretty, but also kind of dressed in the same style, although you can see her face through her little helmet. But yeah, those are the only ones that I can think of that we get.
She looks like she came from Tron.
Right.
Yeah, it's a definite cyber Viking feel.
Yeah.
Well, that was Wicked and the Divine. Justin, thanks for
having me. As I mentioned to Josh, I had seen this title probably around the time it was first published. And I thought, oh, that sounds cool, but I had never picked it up. I just remember it being like, that looks interesting. And then was the extent of my knowledge with that one. So I'm glad that it was one of the ones you guys chose for this season. Because I was like, now is a good time to learn more about that.
Yes, and I'm always happy to talk about this series too. Like, I think I picked it up when it came out in trade at like the local library, probably. And I had already Young Avengers at that point was already one of my favorite things. Like, okay, well, let's see what else this guy can do. And then it was like, oh my God.
Give me all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Put it directly in my veins.
Sure. Well, Leia, both of us are going to go and cook a bunch of food now to get ready for tonight's pay-per-view. Going to be a good time.
It will be great.
Tune in next week, everyone, or in 2 weeks, when we will be doing Secret Empire, the much maligned Captain America Hail Hydra run.
Great.
Woohoo!
Love it.
Yeah.
I remember the infamous photo that was shared.
That's right.
Yep, I remember.
But until then, take it away, Vandello.
A little wreck conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Vandello 2021.